The rain fell gently but endlessly as Lena Foster drove through the countryside of Somerset, England. Her phone lost signal an hour ago, and thick fog wrapped around her car like a ghost's breath. She turned onto a narrow gravel road that led to Gravesend Manor, a place she had never heard of until the letter arrived. Lena was a travel food writer based in Manchester, more familiar with sushi bars and trendy cafes than anything remotely gothic. But the letter that showed up 2 nights ago changed her plans. You are invited to an exclusive dining experience at Gravesend Manor, 1 night only, midnight sharp, a celebration of flavor and memory. The host. No return address, no explanation, just a black envelope sealed with a crimson wax symbol, a skull nestled between blooming lilies. She parked outside the looming stone manor, its sharp towers rising like frozen screams against the foggy sky. Candlelight flickered in tall windows. The building was old, centuries old, yet still alive somehow. A silent man in a black coat opened the heavy front doors before she even knocked. He bowed. "Miss Foster, welcome. The others are waiting. Dinner is served at midnight." Others? He led her down candlelit halls lined with portraits so aged, the subjects seemed to fade into the walls. Shadows moved without sound. The scent of dried herbs and something old, like forgotten paper, filled the air. In the grand sitting room, 4 strangers waited by the fireplace. They all looked up at once. "You made it," said a woman in red velvet. "We were starting to wonder." The group introduced themselves. Margot Bellamy, a stage actress from Paris. Dr. Thomas Vane, a former forensic pathologist. Simon Archer, a rare book dealer from Dublin. Neera Patel, a cultural anthropologist focused on non-recorded folklore. Each of them had received the same invitation. None knew the host, and yet none of them had questioned the request. Lena found that odd, until she realized she hadn't either. The clock in the hall struck midnight. Dong, dong, dong. The same butler returned. "Dinner is ready." The dining room was massive, lit only by a huge crystal chandelier that swayed slightly, as if disturbed by something unseen. A long oak table stood in the center, set for 6 guests. 1 chair remained empty. "Is the host joining us?" Neera asked. The butler's lips barely moved. "In a way." The first course arrived. Wild mushroom bisque, warm and rich. Lena took 1 spoonful and froze. This was the exact soup her father used to make when she was young. He passed away 10 years ago, and no restaurant had ever come close to recreating it. The flavor was identical, too perfect. Margot trembled as she tasted hers. This was served at my wedding. I haven't tasted this since before the fire." One by one, the guests realized that the food wasn't just good, it was personal. Second course, herbed lamb with fig glaze. Dr. Vane pushed his plate away. "This was my mother's recipe. She never wrote it down. How could anyone know this?" Simon stared at his meal, whispering, "This dish died with someone I never told anyone about." Dessert came, vanilla custard with rose petals. Lena couldn't eat. Her spoon trembled. It reminded her of her grandmother's final birthday meal. Then they heard it. Footsteps, upstairs, slow, heavy, measured. Lena turned to the butler. "Who else is in the house?" His answer came softly. "Those who stayed after dinner." Margot laughed nervously. "You mean ghosts?" He finally met her gaze. "Number, they're not spirits. They're memories that refuse to fade." The chandelier flickered. The fire in the hearth hissed and dimmed. Then, the empty chair creaked. All 5 guests turned. A woman sat there now, pale, motionless. Her face was half-shadowed, her dress from another century. She slowly lifted a spoon to her mouth and smiled. "Lovely," she said. Her voice sounded like wind through dry leaves. The pale woman who appeared at the table did not speak again. She simply sat, spoon in hand, eyes wide and glassy as if looking through everyone. The guests were frozen, unsure if they had seen a ghost or something else entirely. Then, without a sound, she was gone. One blink, vanished. The only proof of her presence was the silver spoon on her plate, now resting beside a half-eaten bite of custard that no one dared to touch. The butler reappeared with perfect timing, like he'd been standing in the shadows, waiting for the moment the fear peaked. "Your rooms are ready," he said softly. "Breakfast is served at sunrise, if you make it." Lena narrowed her eyes. "If we make it." The butler said nothing. His pale eyes shifted to the flickering candles, then to the hallway behind him. Simon muttered, "This is insane. We were drugged or hypnotized, or this is some kind of psychological experiment." Nira leaned in. "You all saw her. That woman. That wasn't a hallucination. She moved the spoon." Margot, unusually quiet, logically was staring at the empty chair. "She was sitting where my sister used to sit, when we had dinner, before she drowned." No one responded. Dr. Vane finally stood. "Enough for one night. Let's sleep. If anything else happens, we leave at first light." They all agreed. None of them believed they'd sleep, but staying in the dining room felt worse. Lena was led to the third floor, her room tucked at the very end of a hallway that bent unnaturally to the right. She passed 4 locked doors with rusted handles. The wallpaper along the corridor was peeling in places, revealing writing beneath, names scratched in long looping script, names that looked familiar. Inside, her room was beautiful, a canopy bed, soft blankets, and candles that lit themselves as she entered. A strange warmth lingered in the air, though the window rattled in a breeze that shouldn't exist. On the nightstand sat an old photograph in a silver frame. It showed a young girl, 8 or 9, with Lena's face, but she had no memory of the photo ever being taken. She touched the frame. It was warm. Then behind her, the wardrobe creaked. Lena turned quickly. Nothing. She approached it slowly, every step louder than it should be. Her fingers touched the handle. The moment she pulled it open, a woman screamed from inside the walls. She stumbled back, heart racing. The wardrobe was empty, except for one item, a red velvet glove. The same kind Margot had been wearing at dinner. In her room, Margot didn't sleep. She sat at the window, watching mist crawl across the lawn like reaching hands. She lit a cigarette with shaky fingers. Behind her, the mirror cracked. Not shattered, cracked perfectly down the middle as if sliced by something thin and cold. She walked over. In the fractured glass, her reflection smiled before she did. At precisely 3:13 a.m., all 5 guests awoke to the sound of the dining bell ringing again. Once, twice, 6 times. They left their rooms and met in the hallway, pale and silent, drawn together by something they didn't understand. The butler stood by the dining room door. "Second seating," he said. "What do you mean?" Simon asked. The butler stepped aside. The doors creaked open. Inside, the table was set again, but different. Dust clung to the cutlery. Cobwebs stretched from chair to chair. The fire in the hearth was cold and dead. 5 guests entered. 6 chairs waited. At the head of the table now sat a figure in black, face hidden under a wide-brimmed hat, the host. They raised a glass. "Welcome back," said a voice like falling ash, "to the place where memory feeds, and the dead dine well." The host sat motionless at the head of the table, face hidden by shadow, hands covered in black gloves. The guests stood frozen near the entrance of the dining room, unsure whether to enter or run, but there was nowhere to run. The hallway behind them had gone dark, the door had vanished, trapped. The host finally spoke. The voice was androgynous, ageless, whispery and dry, like wind dragging across dead leaves. "You are not just guests, you are vessels. Each of you has brought something with you, something forgotten. something the house has been hungry for. "Who are you?" Lena asked, her voice tight. The host tilted their head slowly. "I am the keeper of memory and appetite. This house doesn't belong to the living. It belongs to those left behind, and tonight, it remembers you." They raised their hand. A gust of wind blew through the room, candles extinguished. When the lights flared back to life, the room had changed. Now it looked exactly like Lena's childhood kitchen, down to the dent in the wooden table, the humming fridge, and the ceramic bird clock that chirped every hour. Lena backed away in shock. "Number, this isn't real." The others turned. Their surroundings morphed. Now parts of the room were blending memories. Margot's bedroom mirror, Nira's university library shelves, Dr. Vane's surgery room, Simon's father's bookshop. The dining table stood at the center of it all, like an altar made of everyone's past. Simon gasped. "This house is made of us." "No," Nira whispered. "It's made of what we've tried to forget." Margot stumbled toward the old mirror embedded in the wall. Her reflection flickered, then changed. In it, she saw herself as a child, standing in a hallway with a match in her hand. A curtain behind her was on fire. "No," she said, trembling. "That wasn't me. That was an accident." The mirror whispered, "But you watched her burn." Margot screamed. The others pulled her back. The mirror shattered, and the room returned to the manor's form, just briefly. Then the host stood again. They held up a silver plate. "One of you has been chosen. One course must be served, warm." The plate lifted its lid. Inside lay a human heart, steaming and perfectly prepared. A place card beside it read, "Thomas Vane." Dr. Vane backed away, face drained of color. "This is insane. I didn't do anything wrong." The host turned to him. "Not wrong, but forgotten. The patient, the overdose, the cover-up. You buried the memory. This house dug it back up." From the shadows behind the host, a young boy stepped forward, pale, silent, his chest scarred. Dr. Vane collapsed to his knees. "No, I tried to save him. I didn't mean—" The boy's eyes turned black. The candles blew out again. When they came back on, Dr. Vane was gone. Only his plate remained. The heart had been eaten. Panic broke. Simon tried to run. The door opened for him, but when he stepped through, he found himself back at the table as if he'd never moved. Lena turned to the host. "What do you want from us?" The host slowly removed one glove, revealing a hand made of bone and ash. "Not what I want. What you've brought, regret, guilt, memory, and the house, is always hungry." There were 4 of them now: Lena, Margot, Simon, and Nira. Dr. Vane was gone. Not just missing, but erased. His chair now sat empty, clean, untouched. His name no longer appeared on the invitation Lena still kept in her coat pocket, as if he had never existed. And yet, his screams still echoed faintly from somewhere deep in the manor. Determined to find a way out, the 4 split up to search the manor's east wing, a colder, darker part of the house filled with crooked doors and uneven walls. Lena and Nira took the upper floor. Margot and Simon took the cellar. Nira whispered as they walked, "There's something wrong with the architecture. The floor plan keeps changing." "Like a shifting maze," Lena said, running her fingers along the damp wallpaper. Beneath it, she felt carvings, names, dates, even claw marks. She froze when her fingertips brushed over her own initials. LF, 1997. "I've never been here before," she said. Nira didn't answer. She was staring at an oil painting on the wall. It showed a family at a dinner table, clearly from another century. But one of the faces was hers. Meanwhile, Simon and Margot descended into a wine cellar lined with dusty bottles. The air was thick, sour. A humming sound echoed off the stone walls. In the back, they found an old phonograph playing a warped, slow tune. Margot stepped closer to inspect it, then screamed. Her own voice was coming from it. "I never meant for her to die. I just wanted to scare her. Simon stared horrified. That's your confession. Number I never said that out loud. They turned. Behind them stood the girl from the first dinner, the pale one who vanished. But now her face was burned, melted. She stepped forward, reaching toward Margot with blackened hands. I remember, the girl said. Upstairs, Lena and Nira discovered a locked door behind a bookcase. When Nira pressed her hand against it, the door swung open, as if it recognized her. Inside was a hidden library, hundreds of books, all with no titles, just names. Nira pulled one down, her own name on the spine. When she opened it, she saw every moment of her life written in perfect detail. But halfway through the book, the entries changed. She was warned. She didn't leave. She chose to stay. Now she belongs to the house. Her skin will line the walls. Her voice will guide the next guests. Lena backed away. We were brought here to be turned into parts of the house. Nira looked at her. Number, we weren't brought. We came because we were already part of it. Suddenly, everything shifted. Lena woke up alone in the dining room. The table was clean. The candles burned low. The host stood beside her. You should not be here, Lena stood. You invited me. The host leaned in. We invited 5. The air grew cold. Lena pulled the invitation from her coat and held it up. The ink on it was melting, dripping like blood. You didn't receive this, the host said. You stole it. A flash, Lena remembered a stranger bumping into her outside her flat. A dropped envelope. She picked it up. She opened it. She never told anyone. The host's voice was a growl now. You took someone else's place. You were never supposed to dine here. And then, from the far side of the table, a 6th figure appeared. Another Lena. She looked identical, same face, same eyes, but her mouth was sewn shut, and her hands were covered in ink and ash. This is the real one, the host whispered. The one who was meant to come, and now, because of your trespass, you must take her place. Suddenly, Lena couldn't move. Her legs rooted to the floor. Her hands froze midair. Her breath shortened. All around her, the others returned, but now twisted. Simon had no mouth. Nira's eyes were gone. Margot was made of smoke. They gathered around the table, silent, still. The host raised a glass. To the uninvited. Then black vines crawled up Lena's legs. She screamed, but no sound came. The false Lena took her seat at the table and began to eat. The real Lena's final thought was simple. The house doesn't trap you, it replaces you. The real Lena's body was frozen in place, vines of darkness wrapped around her limbs, binding her to the floor. Her vision faded. The false Lena, stitched mouth, hollow eyes, took her place at the table, smiling through broken skin. The host raised their glass. Let the feast begin. But then, something went wrong. The flames in the chandelier flickered. The shadows on the walls trembled, and the real Lena, her eyes still filled with life, began to fight back. As her body stood paralyzed, Lena reached inward. The house fed on memories, on guilt, on trauma. But Lena had something else inside her, something the house hadn't expected. Hope. She remembered a moment from her childhood, a rainy afternoon. Her sister, gone now, holding her hand beneath a blanket fort, telling her, "As long as you remember the good, nothing bad can stay forever." The words echoed, and suddenly, the vines began to loosen. The host turned sharply. Number, not that, not joy. Lena's memories kept coming. Her first kiss, her graduation, her mother's laugh, the smell of pancakes on a Sunday morning. The darkness recoiled. The false Lena began to dissolve, her sewn mouth tearing open into a silent scream. Around the table, the twisted guests, Simon, Nira, Margot, began to blink. Their eyes cleared. The monstrous features peeled away like old wallpaper. They looked at Lena, really looked. "Where are we?" Simon asked, his voice shaky. "This place isn't real," Lena said. It's made of everything we hate about ourselves, but if it can feed on guilt, it can starve on love. She reached out to Margot, who was still shaking. Think of something good, something beautiful. Margot closed her eyes. My sister, when we danced under the porch light, before the fire. Nira spoke next. The first book I wrote, the way my father smiled when he read it. Simon whispered, my dog. Rusty, the way he slept with one paw over his nose. The house shuddered. Books from the cursed library began to fall from the shelves. Windows cracked. The floor beneath the table split, and from below came a sound, sobbing, screaming, and then silence. The host stood now, face no longer hidden. Beneath the hat and shadows was a face made of hundreds of others, faces of victims trapped for centuries. They stepped forward. You don't understand. This house is eternal. No, Lena said. It was eternal, because people believed it had to be, but we stopped believing. With those words, Lena held out the torn invitation. The ink was gone. The paper turned to dust. The table cracked in two. The host fell to their knees, screaming as their body began to unravel, the faces breaking away and vanishing into the light. The manor screamed as if alive, collapsing inward like a dying creature. A blinding white light surrounded them, and then, silence. Lena opened her eyes. She was standing in the forest just beyond the manor's gates. The sun was rising. Beside her stood Simon, Nira, and Margot, whole, human, alive. The manor was gone, not ruined, not burned, gone as if it had never been built. Lena sat outside a small cafe, sipping tea. Across from her, Nira laughed, reading from her new novel, The House That Ate Memory. Simon waved from a bakery nearby, holding a tray of muffins. Margot, now volunteering at a children's hospital, joined them moments later with a group of giggling kids in tow. They remembered what happened, all of it. But now it was just a memory, one they chose to carry together. Lena looked up at the blue sky and smiled. The dead may have dined well, but the living? We made it out hungry for life.